Hi, I'm Leslie Wayne. I'm a Daily alum, and the article that I want to talk about in this book is the chapter called "The Day Paul Was Proclaimed Dead." Before I start, though, I just want to give a shout out to Stephanie Steinberg, who put the book together and who's been promoting it, and she's really been fantastic. So I know that she's at the event tonight, so thank you, Stephanie, for all the hard work that you've done. I was the Michigan Daily Arts editor, and the story that we're talking about is about the alleged death of Paul McCartney. And this story took place in the late 60s. And what happened was that there were rumors that were going around the Midwest about the alleged death of Paul McCartney. And then the story kind of seeped into the Michigan Daily. The story, of course, was completely untrue. I'm a journalist. I've worked at the New York Times for almost 30 years. And the one rule about journalism is that you always tell the truth. You never fabricate anything. If there's a mistake, you correct it. Well, this story was completely fabricated. It was completely false, and it became one of the most famous stories that was done in the Daily. And the story, according to the story, the headline was, "McCartney Dead, New Evidence Brought to Light." And the story was about how Paul McCartney had been killed in a car accident, and then a substitute, Paul McCartney, had been put into the Beatles, and that there were clues throughout all the Beatles music and on the Beatles records and in the photos telling you about this. And the story went viral. It was an international hit. And the backstory is, I was the arts editor, and Fred Labor was my deputy. He currently is a country western singer in the group called Riders in the Sky. He goes by the stage name of Two Slims. He had been listening to some of these talk radio stations in the Midwest one night. And then in Detroit, he was listening to a talk radio station. And they were talking about things like the Sgt. Pepper album, that Paul McCartney's back was turned, that the Abbey Road album, on the famous picture, he was barefoot, that there were all these clues. Fred then took that and sort of created a satire and ran with it. The article had a big photo of Paul McCartney with a black box around it, which underneath it said OPD, officially pronounced dead. He claimed that if you played I Am a Walrus backwards, it would say Paul is dead. It would, other records, that if you played them backwards, you'd hear the same thing. He said that walrus was the Greek word for corpse, which was an indication of death. Of course, that's not true. And it was like a mashup of all these different rumors. One line that I liked, which was from the Abbey Road, that famous cover crossing the street, was, "And if you look closely, they have just walked out of the cemetery on the left side of the street. Thus, Paul was resurrected, given a cigarette, and led out of the tomb, thereby conquering death with a little help from his friends. The real Paul is dead, of course, but his symbolic resurrection works fine without him." Once the story hit, the story went viral. I didn't know that it was, incidentally, I didn't know it was going to run. I gave Fred some reviews to run that night, and instead he wrote this. So I was shocked the next day when it came up. But so was the world was shocked. It went viral.
Started in Detroit. A group of university students were playing tapes backwards and forwards, different speeds. They gave their evidence to a disc jockey in Detroit. His name was Russ Gibb. And together, collectively, they thought Paul McCartney had died. I understand they still do.
Is Paul McCartney alive or dead?
Yesterday, all my troubles seem so far away.
Now at the age of 27, he is either a millionaire Beatle with a beautiful wife, or he's dead and has been for about 2 years.
There were discussions from London to Hollywood to New York. Everybody was finding these clues. Records were being played backwards. Fred was flown around the country to talk about this. The Beatles had to debunk it, and they kept issuing press releases that it wasn't true. The end finally came when Life magazine, which was one of the most famous magazines at the time, ran a cover photo. And the cover photo was of Paul, and it said, "Paul is still with us." So, so at that point, everything kind of collapsed. was a great ride. The story took off like a rocket. And as I say, even though in journalism we always say, you know, write the truth, write the truth, write the truth. In this case, we wrote a false story, but I'm very glad that the story was false. So thank you very much, and I hope you buy the book.